Hey peeps, welcome to another video. Today it is part one of the McCalls 7537 sew along. This is a very different style of dress for me and I am 95% in love with it. I absolutely love this bodice. I adore these sleeves and I really like this tie detail, which is actually something that I was going to leave off, but if I had left it off, this dress would have been pretty much indecent to wear, although there is an option to sew up the front a little bit more and put a button there, but I kind of like this. The thing that I'm not 100% on board with is the skirt, and the skirt is nice and full, but it is a rectangle gathered down at the waist, and as you all know, I have a thing for circle skirts. So at some point in the future I will be recreating this bodice but putting on one of either a full circle skirt, a double circle skirt, a three-quarter circle skirt, a half circle skirt, maybe even a quarter circle skirt, because I think that could look quite nice. But I do really like the trim on this pattern and I really like the way that the bodice goes together, and it has a side zip and I don't hate it. So, you know, it's very outside of my comfort zone, but I'm very glad that my Patreon peeps voted for me to do a sew along for this pattern. So for part one we're going to cover picking the correct size, working out what we need to trace, and then making any alterations that we need to our pattern. So let's get started. For this sew along you will need your pattern, fabric, matching thread, bias binding or grosgrain ribbon or the trim of your choice, 8mm eyelets, cord ends, string, pins, scissors, both fabric and paper, French curve, lightweight interfacing. You're also going to need some pattern making paper, an ironing board, an iron and a sewing machine, all of which are too heavy to put onto this tack counter. How many times can I make that joke before it gets old? Okay, the first thing you want to do is iron your pattern pieces so that the tissue is nice and flat. That will make tracing them so much easier and will give you a nice accurate trace as well. And yes, I do trace my pattern pieces because patterns in the UK are expensive even when they're in the sale, and I would like to be able to use this again if I change sizes. Plus I also need to do quite a lot of alterations to most of these patterns, and I find doing it to traced paper rather than the tissue is much more reliable and I don't rip things. So I use tracing paper that I get from Warplan. It's a 300-meter roll. It's around £75, so it's very good value for money. The last one I had lasted me about 4 years, and the way that I use it is because I'm tracing on a dark background, I put down a whole roll, a long roll that goes over the side there as a base, then I put the pattern piece down and then I'll put the tracing paper over the top. It can be a little hard to see through, so there's something else called Swedish tracing paper. That is more expensive. It's around £15 for 10 meters, but it is much easier to see through, and you can also sew that so you can fit muslins from the traced pattern. So there's that option as well. Once you have ironed your pattern pieces, you then need to work out which pattern pieces that you need to trace. Now I like all of these options. I like the long sleeved, I like the cap sleeve, I really like the billowy sleeves, and I like the short sleeve, so I'm going to trace all the sleeve options. The only thing I'm not tracing is the ruched midriff panels, because I don't think I would ever use those in any of the dresses that I would make. So everything else I'm tracing. So I have written out the list of all the different pieces that I need to do here, except for number 5, which is the overlay. So I'm basically tracing out every other piece except for number 5. Now that I've worked out which pieces I need to trace, I now need to work out which size I need to trace. According to the pattern envelope, I need a size 16 bust, I need a size 12 waist, and I need a size 18 hip. So the hips on this are actually, the skirt panels are rectangular in nature, so I'm not going to worry about the hips on this one at all, but the finished garment measurements are listed on the pattern pieces here. So it's on pattern piece 1 and the waist is on pattern piece 8. So my bust is a 38, that says I should do the 16. I have the pattern bundle that goes up to the size 14. I'm going to have a look and see what the 14 maximum measurement is, and on the envelope that says it's a 36-inch bust, and that will give you a 41-inch finished garment. Now that is 36, that's 5 inches of wearing ease, around this area. Now it is gathered down here, but I still think that's a little bit much, so I'm actually going to go for the size 12 bust, which I'm going to make a note of here. And then for the waist, it says that I need to do the size 12, so it's a 26.5-inch waist. Size 12 on here, that gives you a finished measurement of 28.5 inches, which is 2.5 inches of wearing ease. I'm going to stick with that. I think that's going to be quite comfortable to wear. I could possibly go down to 27 inches, either of these ones, but I think I'm going to go for the size 12. I think that will be a slightly more comfortable dress to wear. So it's going to be a size 12 bust, size 12 waist, and then the hips I'm not going to worry about. As I say, the pattern piece is a gathered skirt, so I'm actually going to trace the largest size because that will give me a slightly more wiggle room over here, and I can just gather the waist down to fit the size 12 waist pieces that I'm going to trace here. Now that I have worked out what sizes I need to do, I'm just going to trace all the pattern pieces off, and as I trace them I will then tick off each of the numbers, as you can see I've done here with the previous pattern, and that's just so that I don't forget or miss any pieces whilst I'm tracing, which I have done. Ask me how I know. So I'm going to get on and get everything traced out. Once I've got all the pieces cut out, I need to lengthen the bodice by an inch, because that is just a standard measurement that I always need to do on any McCalls, Butterick or Vogue pattern, and quite a lot of the indies as well. So I have the pattern piece 6 and 7 and 8. So this is the pattern piece for A, B and D, and then these are, getting the right way around, the pattern pieces for view C, which has got the split waistband. Now this hasn't got a lengthen and shorten line on it. It didn't have a lengthen and shorten line on it anywhere, so I'm going to be making one up as I go along. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my French curve and I'm going to draw a line about an inch up from the centre front and centre back here, and just draw a straight line through that, and that's going to be my lengthen and shorten line. Absolutely no idea if that's correct, but that's what the last pattern piece that looked similar to this had, so I'm going to go with that. Once I've drawn my lengthen and shorten line, I then want my perpendicular reference line to make adding the length in and putting the pattern pieces back together easier. I'm going to take a piece of scrap paper. As I say, I need to lengthen all of my patterns by an inch. I'm being bad and not making muslins for the, and I'm not going to make a muslin for this one because I have a feeling this is going to fit me pretty well out of the packet with just this alteration. And the fabric I'm using is a very inexpensive fabric that I got from the Textile Centre, which I have loads of, so I'm not overly worried or precious about that fabric. So this is going to be my wearable muslin. If I do need to make massive changes to it, I will of course be doing that along with you guys and adding to this sew along. So after I've drawn my rectangle that is an inch wide, I've then drawn a perpendicular line at a right angle all the way through that, and that's going to help me match up the registration line that I drew on my pattern piece. So I am going to chop through the lengthen and shorten line. Yep. And I'm going to take that bottom piece of the pattern with the cut edge and match the cut edge up to the bottom of the rectangle that I drew and tape it down. And then I'm going to take the top piece of the pattern and match the cut edge up to the straight line that I drew, which is an inch above the last one. Use my registration line to make sure that my pattern piece is going on correctly, and tape that down. So now that I've taped everything down, I need to smooth out the edges. So this one is simple because this is a straight line, so that's easy. This one is a little bit more difficult, and I've got the top corner of the pattern piece there, and I'm lining up my straight edge with the bottom corner of the pattern piece. I'm just going to draw a line all the way up. I'm actually going to need to stick a little bit more tape onto this because it's like that. There we go. So now I can cut out my new lengthened pattern piece. So I've lengthened my pattern piece by an inch. Now for these ones, I want to keep the balance the same, so I'm actually going to lengthen each of these by 1/2 inch, which will then obviously add up to 1 inch overall when they're sewn together. So I'm going to use exactly the same method to do that. Okay, so my box here this time, or my rectangle here this time, is only 1/2 inch wide because, as I say, I'm going to add 1/2 inch to both of these pattern pieces. I haven't drawn a registration mark on this one as yet, and that's okay because I've drawn it through this pattern piece. So the cut edge goes along the bottom line of that 1/2 inch rectangle that I drew. Tape it down, make sure everything is nice and flat. I'm going to take my straight edge, line it up with that registration mark, draw the line through so that I know where I'm lining up here. So the cut edge is going along the top edge of that 1/2 inch mark. Okay. This again is a straight edge because this is going to be cut on the fold, so I'm just going to fill that in. And then this edge, same thing, tape down that side of it, straight line from the top corner down to the bottom corner. Yes. So there we have the upper midriff done. So I'm going to do exactly the same to the lower midriff, and that way I will have added 1 inch of length to the midriff panels of pattern ball version C. As ever, if you have any questions at all, please let me know in the comment section down below and I will do my best to answer them for you. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye!